Hey friends, welcome back to Hey Wait. This is Jay, and I am both excited and a little nervous to share this episode with you. I'm excited because if you're someone who is highly sensitive, gets overwhelmed easily, and feels like you have to shut down parts of yourself just to function in the world or be in relationship, you're going to feel like today's guest is speaking your language. And I am nervous because in this conversation, I out myself as someone who is deeply energetically sensitive, which isn't something I usually talk about publicly. Not because I'm ashamed of it, but because I have an aversion for how woo-woo and weird the language for talking about this sounds. And yet, this sensitivity is the primary way I relate to the world. It's how I connect with other people, it's how I make decisions, and I had to learn how to coordinate with that sensitivity instead of overriding it. And that process has shaped my personal and professional life in fundamental ways. You might be highly sensitive too, and if so, my guest is going to give you language for an experience that sometimes feels beyond your ability to describe, and tools that will help you feel more peace in yourself. And if that's not you, you might be skeptical or think this stuff sounds kind of out there. And if so, I get it. But I want to urge you to stay with us because I am certain there is someone in your life who does speak this language. And it might be your kid or your partner or your sister. And this conversation will help you understand them in a way you never have. And it will change your relationship. All right. All that said, let me introduce you to my guest, Craig Walker. He's a doctor of chiropractic, a yogic energy instructor, and the founder of Subtle Energy Mechanics, which is a deeply integrative approach to healing that blends structural insight with energetic precision. And over the last 20 years, he's worked with more than 50,000 people, most of whom are highly sensitive, empathic, neurodivergent, and hold complex trauma. And he helps them shift out of chronic overwhelm into internal calm and coherence. I met Craig almost 2 decades ago back in Portland, Oregon, when I was teaching yoga and he was starting his chiropractic practice. And when I first got on his table for a treatment, I could not explain what was happening, but it made complete sense to my body. His work helped me feel more at home in my nervous system than I ever had before, and I still today use the tools I learned from him then. In our conversation, we talk about reclaiming sensitivity as intelligence and about how attunement, not just emotionally, but somatically, is the missing piece you need to feel safe, seen, and actually connected to yourself and others. Craig's work may not be mainstream, but the experience he speaks to is everywhere. The feeling of being alien or overwhelmed because of how sensitive your system is. So whether he's speaking your language or the language of someone you love, my hope is that this episode helps you understand, connect, and relate in a new way. Hey, Craig. Good to see you.
Jay, great to see you as well.
It's happening. I was thinking about before we got on today how you were basically maybe the only person in my life who when we've had some dorked out conversations over the years where we dork out on yoga and subtle energy and quantum healing and all of that, but we also dork out on riding motorcycles and dirt bikes and what are our favorite motorcycles. And so you're I think the only person in my life who shares that big spectrum of passion and curiosity, which makes it really fun to talk with you.
Yes, we have to build our lives around, we wouldn't call it ADHD, but if you've got a broad spectrum of interests, you have to come up with activities to
That's true.
keep ourselves smiling. Yeah.
So speaking of the broad spectrum then, I want to start because you and I can go into talking about subtle energy and yoga. We speak that language, but I want you to address the listener who might not, they might be more on the mainstream end of that spectrum where they either don't know what subtle energy is or they've heard of it, but they're really skeptical or curious, but unsure. How would you describe what subtle energy is to that person and how you work with it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a fair question. I definitely come from the left brain scientific skeptic camp. I mean, my family are all scientists and doctors. And it wasn't until I think you and I shared a common chiropractor and, way back when in Portland. And I had gone in to see this guy one time and he barely touched me. And so barely that I was a bit pissed off, and didn't think
what am I paying you for?
Exactly. I didn't think I was lying there. I was a chiropractic student at the time, and so he didn't charge chiropractic students. So I was lying on the table, and I was thinking like, well, maybe this is the free version because he's not doing anything. I was used to stretching and snapping and cracking and popping. That was what I was expecting. So then he comes along and barely touches me. And over the next 12 hours, my emotions and body and awareness changed. I had the best night of sleep I'd had in over a decade. And I had been in chiropractic school for a few years at that point, knowing what could be done with me and knowing all the injuries I'd had. And this guy with a couple like light touches produced some really aggravatingly powerful results, aggravatingly because he pulled the rug out from underneath my career choice at that point, because nothing that he did was what I was learning. Yeah,
that's
so everybody else would have been
a hey wait moment where you're like,
yeah, oh yeah. Everybody else would have been psyched. I found my guy, and he was pulling the rug out from under, a couple $100,000 of medical school loans, and I just wanted to be a spine mechanic, raise my kids, and this guy. He didn't try to sell me anything. He didn't pitch me on anything. He didn't even tell me anything. He just went tap, 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 Bing. Tap. Yeah. So then I was like, I didn't even know what camp to put that in, but I do need to figure out what it was that he did, which sent me down this rabbit hole of trying to figure out what it was he did. And so when I was like, I got most of my answers from then looking into yoga, and then taking yoga teacher trainings and reading about yoga. They had so far what I've come across is the best map that allowed me to explain what he did. Because I was still trying to explain, all I was a results guy. I wanted to figure out how to get those results because they were better than the results that I had seen before. Mm-hmm. So subtle energy, what I came across in the yogic studies was there's 3 states of consciousness: waking, and then dreaming, and deep dreamless, where there's no dreams. You're just out there. There are energies that move in the waking state. Those are called gross energies. If we're going to the gym, we're using our gross energy. We're pushing things around. In the dream state, which is just all images, we can see a delightful dream, a delightful image, and it moves our body and emotions to open up. We can see a scary one and it closes us off. Those are considered subtle energies. Mm-hmm. Still very powerful in controlling the body, controlling the immune system, controlling where we go in life and who we like and who we don't like. And then causal energy is a different, is a different set. But what I realized was, that's, again, me just sort of trying to put the breadcrumbs together. What did he do? And realized that he was working in the subtle energy realm. And turns out there's mechanics to how the subtle energy works. And I was mechanically stuck in a fight, flight, freeze, traumatized pattern for decades that I didn't know. I just figured I was just painfully moving through life, and I didn't know that somebody could come along and be like, oh, well, let's check these little tuning areas and poke here. And it created this what felt like, in retrospect, maybe a spiritual awakening. The side effect was a lot of healing experience. But it definitely woke me up to a potential of how I could be just easy and content and present and excited in the moment rather than scurrying.
And so when you talk about that, and, the listener can't see, but when you're doing that, like tap, it's just like this very gentle, and you're tapping along the spine typically. But the question I have is, when you're talking about the subtle energy moving, is it moving in the spine? Is it moving in the nervous system? Both?
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, good question.
Because the reason I ask, listener, is because when you're on the table getting a treatment in subtle energy, it often makes your spine move or undulate.
Yeah. There's it's called an emergent property. Emergent property is, well, the same thing like you pour a muffin mix in a muffin tin and then you stick it in the oven and you don't know what's going to happen if you've never seen it before. And you come back 20 minutes later and this emergent thing's like, whoa, it looks completely different now. This big muffin. So our nervous system does the same thing. There's this. So all the point there is that there's a thing that will present itself in the body and in the nervous system that you have no idea is even lying there dormant, waiting for it to be awakened. And so you're talking about this, there's a couple waves that move up and down through the spine. And that's the physiology consistent with this subtle energy. And it turns out with these light touches in the neck and the tailbone, it brings the person's focus, just like if you lightly touched your cheek, it brings your focus to how your cheek feels right there. Right? You can touch your other cheek and you realize your focus goes over there. And what this chiropractor did when he touched my neck in this very specific spot is it brought my focus there. Mm-hmm. Energy follows focus. So he knew that to bring my focus somewhere, energy would follow it. And then my subconscious went, whoa, what's happening here? It was almost like a little, like here, it was telling my subconscious to look right here. And there was the space of deep silence. And it was almost a portal between like waking and dreaming, when you're at night, as you're sort of drifting off into that waking, into the dreaming, there are these locations along the spinal cord that in effect are these little areas of tissue that represent that physiology that will, if you rest your focus there, you'll start to drift into dream state. As that happens, these subtle energies start to move through the spine because the body's like, okay, we're going into dream state. And then the body then starts to undulate itself like we're going into dream state. And so now you're halfway awake and halfway asleep. And a lot of amazing healing can happen when you're living by dream rules instead of waking state rules, if that makes sense.
Well, and I'm imagining too, speaking at the level of your nervous system, there's something happening there that's translating or transmitting the message of safety. Because you talked about your body was kind of locked in fight, flight, freeze. And there's a locked sort of pattern to that. And so I'm imagining there's some sort of message that says this is safe. So
we all know what it looks like when a dog is freaked out. If it thinks it's going to get hit by a stick, it tucks head, tucks tail. Yeah, exactly. We do the same thing. We tuck head, so it moves forward, it stretches the neck, and we tuck tail, and so it tucks our tailbone, right? And that then creates feedback messaging between the body and the brain, the body and the brain, the body and the brain. I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe. I have to look outside of me. I have to create a persona to be able to fluidly get through this conversation, fluidly get through this experience. But then when somebody says something that I'm not able to slowly stop and receive, I get triggered. So there's always this kind of violence in the background. And what was the initial question? I was already starting to drift off. What was the
just is there
safety?
Is it transmitting safety messages to the nervous system? Yeah,
great question. So then with people maybe familiar with the Kundalini, or there's energy that moves up and down through the spine. Kundalini is one that people know about because it's this big showy, it looks like 4th of July, looks very ecstatic. And it is, but that doesn't actually transmit safety. It transmits a different experience. But there is with the right level of touch, like again, if you just lightly touch your cheek or lightly touch your eyelid, your focus goes to that depth of tissue, and at the specific really top depth of tissue, the first millimeter or two, there's a slow motion response that starts. So there's 5 different frequencies that build the energy that go up and down through the spine. But the very first one is the one that's my favorite because it's the safety one. It's the one that's the least flashy. It doesn't create this big, energetic, blissful explosion. But what it does is it creates this return back home into our body, into safety. And this is what we should have gotten from our parent, our mom or dad, when inevitably we get freaked out as babies. And they know how to hold us in the right way, usually around the neck and the tailbone. If you think about holding an infant, we hold them there. So when we hold lightly around the neck and the tailbone, while we are witnessed with compassion and love, our nervous system learns how to reflect back to ourselves, like, okay, we're safe. I can come home. So there's a returning home physiology that is taught relationally and only relationally between two humans.
I'm like, yes, say more about that. Because, the nervous system is relational inherently. Energy, this subtle energy, is inherently relational. And you talk a lot about attunement in your work. And it isn't, in more mainstream ways, when we talk about attunement, we're talking about emotional attunement, using your words to say, I understand you. But you talk about somatic attunement. And when you had that image of holding the baby gently at the neck and the tailbone, I took a deep breath. My entire body softened. I imagine that is part of somatic attunement.
It is, yeah, and it's amazing to do while you're holding a baby, right? Because this is stuff that we, should have learned as babies, and that we just know intuitively. Meaning, we watch our bodies do it, but we don't necessarily know how to consciously bring it up and then coordinate it, if you will.
Let me interrupt you there. We watch our bodies do what?
Okay. Oh yeah. So we'll watch our bodies soften when we are with a loved one. Right? If we watch our bodies breathe, as you just did, you noticed that something in the interaction here, or the concept, the breath, knew that right now is appropriate to step more into myself, more into my safety. And the breath actually is this slow motion energy and information delivery vessel. If you think about what massage therapists or chiropractors do, we push things from the outside in, but the body's also designed to do that from the inside out. And a coordinated breath will be used to send the all clear signal to us. It's designed to go from tailbone up to the neck and then back down to soften our guarding patterns from the inside, but only when it's been trained to do that. And mine hadn't been, when I was in that fight, flight, freeze, I didn't know any better. That had been my normal for so long. And it wasn't until somebody actually said, could see where I was, could see that I was tuck head, tuck tail, like that scared dog. And I'd been living that way, meaning I didn't know how to get out of it. And he knew that what was going to get me out of it was my nervous system. But my nervous system, when prompted by him or an outside intelligence that could reflect back to me and say, look here, and then look here. And then he saw that the breath knew to go to those two places. And as soon as it goes to those two places, this emergent property of this wave phenomenon, return to safety, then presents itself.
So his somatic presence is part of the equation. His capacity to see your energy and somatic patterns is part of that. And that is then what allows for the somatic attunement, or the physical attunement that most of us have never gotten.
Yeah. So there were two pieces. He was intellectually skilled enough and trained well enough to know that anatomically he needs to look in the region of a couple really specific areas of the neck and really specific areas of the tailbone, so that he could figure out what specific pattern is Craig tucking his head and tucking his tail. Because because it is a very coordinated and millennia practiced pattern. There are a number of them. So when he knew how to identify the pattern, when he touched me, he was also splitting his focus, part on me, part being very present with himself. So he could run that, what I call the first kosha or safety frequency through himself, so that as we then started to merge, as I was coming out of separate isolation back into the space of this, I don't know, a collective or conscious bubble that two people can share. And this is me just been trying to figure out how best to reproduce this experience. I'm coming up with words that I've come across, right? I'm not inventing this stuff, but this is the best way that I can explain it, because we have to reproduce it, right? So he was able to mechanically touch me while he did something with his focus within himself. And those two things brought me out of it.
I'm so curious right now what the listener's experience is, because I know when I talk about this with you or anyone, my whole experience of my spine, my breath, my energy shifts. And, I don't use labels a lot when I talk about myself or my clients, but when you and I reconnected, Craig and I ran into each other randomly at a conference last fall. And when we reconnected, we were talking about how our work had evolved over the years. And it came out that we both work with the same person, which is we work with people who are highly sensitive, who are empathic, often neurodivergent, have experienced either developmental trauma or complex trauma, maybe have addiction in the past. And this is you and I as well. Like we've talked about, this is this highly sensitive, empathic. So I'm imagining that is the person for whom this work really wakes something up, because it did for me. It was like the language doesn't make any sense. The
right.
woo-woo meter in me still goes off like, what the actual F are you talking about? You know what I mean? But like I can feel it in my body. And I'm imagining the person out there who has identified with being sensitive their whole life, or you mentioned in something you said that, the kind of needing to mask who you are, or to be in strategy just to be around other people, because your system, if your system is that sensitive, and you're talking about someone just touching with their fingertip very, very sensitively, I can understand what you meant by using the word violent. That you're that if you're used to being that sensitive, your entire world around you, your everyday life, can be overwhelming.
Yeah. I was just thinking we should have a separate chapter of the podcast, like this is where Jay and I go full woo.
Right, like alert.
And I may not at this point, but I was having the idea to share part of our interaction at that conference last year to put into context what all of us might be witnessing when we're actually looking at somebody receiving this work, and our brain ties itself into little mental pretzels, being like, what am I looking at? This is wacky, and this isn't real, and I'm being taken for somebody slipped me the medicine, and I can't be in a world where there are no boundaries because she's doing something and he's 20 feet away and she's not looking at him, but she's responding to what he's doing. But if we look at the person that you just described, highly sensitive, empathic, well, we would only come across those terms and label ourselves with those as we're trying to figure out what we are. What am I? Well, I'm a thing that responds apparently to how other people feel across the room. I'm like, well, what is that? As well, it's weird, but what's a different name for it? Empathic. So people are like, well, I'm an empath, meaning I feel what's going on in other people, meaning I'm somehow there's no boundaries to this body thing that I'm in. How is it that my body's digesting something over here in its gut that nobody else can see, but it's not mine?
but it's real.
And it's
I
real.
feel it so real.
Yeah. And they talk about this on the telepathy tapes, where so many people are walking around walking around in a culture that fundamentally believes that we are separate beings walking around. And so we have to have our name, and we stand in line, and we got the things, and we drive around, and we don't, ram into each other. And so there are rules to being separate beings. But then what do we do when we're at home trying to figure out, well, what the heck am I really? Because I'm feeling stuff. Am I crazy? And then, gosh forbid that you take some psychedelics and that thing really goes through the roof. And you have some experience that you come back from, like, okay, now I really know that I'm not what I thought I was. And so turns out that the empathic or highly sensitive person, it's a particular, I was imagining it like a guitar while I was walking this morning, that every guitar is born. It doesn't know what it is until its parent, if you will, tunes it. So the parent tunes it, and then the guitar starts to feel amazing. And that's what is called attunement, and that's what's lacking in the people with complex PTSD. You were born this sensitive thing, but you were never really tuned into what you are by the reflection of an empathic witness, a loving parent. So then you're walking around as an adult, and your body's doing things like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling what's happening over here. I'm feeling what's happening over here. What do I need to do? I need to bubble myself off or build a boundary, because that's logical. But it turns out that doesn't actually match our design. And this attunement allows for your body to stay safe while it's alive and awake in what would be considered the collective consciousness, where you're actually in almost a wide open brain, where you're seeing and feeling other people's internal experiences, but your body is so acutely attuned to itself, it doesn't have to take it on. It doesn't get overwhelmed by other people's internal experiences. You can be present in the feeling of them without falling in to their world or them falling into yours and sending us into overwhelm.
Because that's the thing I see. Yeah, and that's the thing I've seen in myself and I see in my clients. When you are that sensitive, it's really easy to lose yourself around other people.
Yeah.
You are constantly trying to kind of look for the thing that is the anchor. And it's not usually yourself, until you're trained for that to be. And in a moment, I want to ask you more about how do you do that for yourself. But you have some language that, again, the language for this stuff is tricky. Like it can verge on the realm of woo if it's unfamiliar to someone. But I also find that it's helpful for identifying an experience if you've had this experience for your whole life. And the language I'm just talking about is being subject-centered versus field-centered. Because can you describe that for the person listening? Because if you are highly sensitive, this is what's going on.
Yeah. And I came across this, the woman's name's escaping me right now. She's an autistic professor at University of Toronto, very eloquent in how she speaks about the autistic experience from the inside, and that there are two different experiences of the moment. There is what might be considered, even though there is no neurotypical, but we'll just say that, kind of a stretch on the spectrum. And then there's a neurodivergent experience. If you ask the person that would be, we'll say the neurotypical, hey, what are you? I'm Craig, I'm a dad, I drive this car, I like to drive motorcycles, and I like to look at birdies. It's the answer comes from a separate, a foundational experience of me as a separate, and this separate body likes to do these things, and it doesn't like to do these other things. This is my definition of self: is I like these, I don't like those, and so I gravitate towards people who like to do the same thing. If you ask somebody who's more, and so that would be subject-centric, because I'm the subject. Now, subject, what is the opposite of subject? Would be the field is everything. There's no boundaries. And the example being, if you ask then the person who's field centric, what are you? They immediately wouldn't even be able to receive the question, because the you is everything. They feel themselves being relational, and only a few seconds later does their nervous system chunk down the experience into, oh, I'm a separate thing. Oh, you're asking, what does my separate thing like? But their primary existence is as everything, and flowing energetic experiences that might actually happen a bit in the background or in the periphery.
And not necessarily consciously, I'm imagining.
No, not necessarily.
They don't get that they just have a hard freaking time answering that question, because it's like,
Yeah. But then it's awkward trying to interact with people who are better at living day-to-day life as a separate being. They're really skilled at bantering back and forth and doing a lot of these interactions purely as a separate being, where the field-centric person really, to stay in integrity with what they are, including our words and our concepts. Words and concepts aren't designed to be aiming at the experience of relational and everything.
Ineffable, right?
Ineffable, which yeah. In under a minute, I want to share a bit of experience of when you and I saw each other at the conference. It was a yoga conference, and I didn't, I expected like 6 or 8 people to come to I had a talk where I talked about Kundalini energy and stuff. And so I expected, 6 or 8 people to show up, and it would be a small group of us. And then I walked in the room and it was like 80 people. It was a complete, so I had to pivot on the fly. So what I ended up doing was walking around and giving people an experience of this light touch. And of the 80 people, everybody's eyes, I'm sure, turned and watched and felt you. Because of the 80, your body and your spine were clearly the most coordinated in its ability to feel and from moment to moment move and process the energy and what relational energetic exchange was happening between the two of us. What they would have seen was your spine moving in this wave. And it's just a natural phenomenon for our spines to learn to coordinate this wave. But what became so apparent was most of the population, even those that are at a yoga convention, don't have the physiology that has coordinated their own highly sensitive empathic nature. And yours was in stark contrast to that. And so for me, it was again, very, very, it was just a stark contrast to witness.
Well, it's funny. This is a part of my experience that I very rarely speak about. But, people who've known me and know my work know that I started as a yoga teacher when I was 18 years old. And so I've been in that world a long time. And I would say that I orient to the world very energetically. I've always talked about being emotionally sensitive, which is true. But what's more true is just being energetically sensitive. And it's a hard thing to talk about, especially like being East. You're not East Coaster, but that sense of give me something logical here, give me something that I can understand. And I think it's true for a lot of people, though. What you're speaking to is that mine was more nuanced, but I've trained for a long time. I know this, but I think there were a lot of people in that room who are highly sensitive, empathic, energetic. And it's very clear to me that our world is set up for people who are subject centered. Our world, most of our parenting, most of our schooling, most of our just society in general is really oriented for the subject-centered person. If you are more field-centric, if you are the person who can walk into a room and feel someone else's emotions who are 10 feet away from you, how do you begin? If the person listening identifies with that, how do they begin to do this work for themselves? If, they're thinking, my spine's going to move like a wave. Like what? Like, where do they start?
Yeah. Yeah. And just to highlight, there's nothing broken here. I didn't look at that room to see, people were injured or traumatized. Sure. What you were demonstrating and what you're demonstrating even right now, why people may be pulled to your podcast is it's a coordination thing, no different than when we learned to ride a bicycle. So when you said emotion, one of these 5 energy flows up and down through the spine is emotion. One is safety, one is emotion, and then 2 of them are how our body and brain manage thoughts. So really, what are we coordinating? Your ability to be subject-centric and field-centric at the same time, which is what we're seeing right now. You are moving in a rhythm, which is the 3rd kosha. You're feeling the emotion coming up through you, which is the 2nd kosha. First kosha is you have this slow access to safety and breath rooted in your system the entire time. So what we're just talking about is the physiology that's allowing us to have this subjective experience of you as separate and me feeling very included in your world. So you're bringing us in with the field-centric while you're able to stay separate and your subject separate. So it's really just how do you mediate both these experiences.
Oh, that's cool. I've never had someone articulate it like that. And again, I can feel that. And for the person listening who doesn't know what kosha is a sheath, a layer of experience. It's from the yogic world.
Yeah, we can call them frequencies, or just like a guitar. There's 5 different strings, and they have a different tone. And when all 5 of those or 6 of those strings in a guitar are tuned properly, it's amazing. But if it's out of tune, people are going the other way. So that's really what our traumatized childhood is. It didn't even necessarily break us, but we didn't ever get tuned to ourselves and to the others.
So that then brings me back to the question: is there something that the listener can do to start tuning to themselves and getting more of that sense of quiet?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that's like, when you talk about when I feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. So was this the breath one or the meditation one?
Whichever you feels. Yeah, we were talking before about what things we could share. So that's what he's asking me there.
Yeah.
Whichever one you feel is appropriate here.
So there are 2 things that I do, but I'll drop in to, there's one that I can do, or that I work with all of my clients, that will start with the breath, because you can do this on the fly. I can do it while I'm sitting here. I can do it while I'm driving, while I'm in the line at the coffee shop. So for the highly sensitive, and I had my own trauma as a child, when I'm around others, I can feel it when my body starts to get triggered and going into fear mode. And then my brain will say, no, 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 no. And it's like then gripping onto an ice sheet, like there's no stopping it. And so then it just gets worse. So what my teacher showed me, and I continue to use this one because it's simple and it's easy and it works. So
that's the best combo.
It's so good. Yeah. So as we're breathing, right? You don't have to do anything to force the breath. We're not, slowing it down. We're not counting it. We're not pushing it. We're just actually paying attention. I'm going to use my internal scanner and just invite my breath into the upper chest. And I can be doing this while I'm sitting here. I'll watch it move in and out of my upper chest, and I'm just inviting it to the upper chest a couple times. And again, I'm not forcing it. I'm watching to see, I'm just paying attention there to see, how does my subconscious, the part that's breathing me all the time, how does it like bringing breath up to here? And I'll just take note of that. Then I'll pay attention. I'll bring it into my diaphragm right there below the bottom of the sternum. And I'm just going to feel how spontaneously it should feel very different than the upper one. And then we're going to get complicated now. We're going to bring the breath down to the belly button. Okay. It's not complex, but just super simple here. So then in the belly button, notice if if there's an impulse to take a full breath, and if we restrict it a little bit because, oh wait, I don't want to push my belly out. There's a lot of cultural conditioning around, what do I do with my breathing, right? So that's the first part, is this check-in, but in these 3 very specific regions.
So it's throat.
Yeah, just below the throat, between the heart and the throat. Yeah, the upper chest there. Yeah.
And then solar plexus area.
And then, yeah, right there at the bottom, the sternum ends at the bottom, little bump there. The xiphoid process is a little bump. Uh-huh. So right under that. Yeah, okay. Right beneath.
And then belly button.
And then belly button, yeah.
Okay.
And so while I'm doing this, I'm just curious to see which one is the easiest. Which one is the most either delightful or the least disturbed, depending on what kind of emotional state I'm in. That's my home base. As opposed to, I think, where many of us would go is like, oh, I feel most restricted in my upper chest, and then we try to force the breath in there. We tell it you need to relax. We're not going to do that. We're going to find which one's the home base, and there's a reason why we're doing this. Yeah, because we know that there's the fight, flight, freeze, or the sympathetic dominant nervous system, the panicking part, and then there's the parasympathetic part, the I'm chilling out and happy because I've been camping for a week, super relaxed part. So those 2 parts of the nervous system are always accessible when we check to see which of these 3 positions is the most easy or most delicious to our breath. That's the one of the 3 branches of the vagus nerve. Tell me if I'm going too fast. There's 3 branches of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the big one that's responsible for bringing us back from panic. Mm-hmm. So if we can access our vagus nerve and then show it the direction to go, it will then start to bring us back more quickly into the parasympathetic, out of the panic, back into the relaxed and regulating. And
so it's like taking the path of least resistance where it already feels easy and open and safe. So just go there and you'll bring the rest along.
Because energy follows focus, but focus also follows energy, which is a different topic, but it's a good one to remember. So if we bring our focus and just rest it over the part that already feels open, energy will come there, the subconscious will come there, and it'll start to magnify what it's already doing. And in this case, it'll turn up the volume on the parasympathetic nervous system, on the relaxation response, and it takes energy away from the other 2 regions that might be more panicky, more stressed out, more believing a lie and wanting to speed up, get triggered.
So this is something someone can do in real time. Like what you described about being highly sensitive and then being around a person and that the panic and then the override of your brain that's like, no, Craig, you don't get to do this. Like that strategizing, that mental energy, I so identify with that, and I know so many of my clients would as well, and the people listening. So if that's you and you're around other people, is this something they can do? Like I'm in a conversation and I'm just gonna put part of my attention on, can I bring my breath to my right below my collarbones? Can I bring is this real time?
You can go so hard with this one where just like riding a bike, because we love riding bikes, where we should get so good at being able to just internally scan like I'm doing right now with you. In the background, I'm going from place to place to place, looking to see where am I the most open so that I can stay in touch with you and me. So just like riding a bicycle, once we got it, we could ride and talk at the same time. I was on an interview with a potential new client 2 days ago, and he had such trauma in childhood that hadn't been revealed yet, but I was triggered as heck, and I'm talking to him, but I'm just going from 1 to 2 to 3 and just managing myself because I am field centric. I feel exactly what's going on with him. So my goal wasn't to numb myself out and detach, but how do I keep one hand on home base? So that when he and I could connect, I was able to go, okay, so let's pause for a second. I'm going to go raw here. What happened to you? What happened to you? And because I was here and connecting there and there was safety, tears were immediate. And he said, nobody has ever dropped in and cut right through my BS, right to that. And, you know, it's super high tech stuff. I'm like, position 1, position 2, position 3. Which one's the easiest? Keep going there.
Love that.
Yeah.
This is how you stay, right? Like, this is how you stay with yourself around someone else and create the capacity for actual connection. Because that is something I talk about all the time in my work, which is we are inherently relational beings, but we aren't usually relating with other people. We are around them. We're trying to manage ourselves with them, but we're not creating felt connections like that. And I can feel it when you talk, and you talking about that moment where he felt resonance, where he felt you and the tears. It's like, it just immediately does that for me as well. Cause it's like a drink of water after crossing the desert. If you're
an empath, we don't need to bubble to keep separate, but we do need an answer to the problem of being overwhelmed. So if we can find a skill set to go out to the field, back into self, out to field, back into self, so that we can stay within reach of our own safety, our own internal regulation. And then when we do get to a place of overwhelm, we need to turn around and head back to our cave. But if we're there's a real amazing role for people with a highly skilled empathic ability, is that we can really help the others come home to their own safety. And your empathy is the compass that you help other people, that you use to help other people find their way home to how many of us were walking around that didn't have safe parents, that we weren't attuned? We're everywhere, right? This complex PTSD underlies the addiction that's out there, and they're looking for God, and they can't find God through life because life has never been safe, but they can find it through heroin or coke or drinking or whatever. And so the only thing that's going to beat that addiction is when somebody else can attune them back into their actual real time right now place of like home, safety. I'm okay.
Yeah, and that home and safety within yourself is the foundation for all healing. And I think that's part of why you have, listener, Craig has incredible stories from working with clients, from everything from long COVID to fibromyalgia to autism to alcoholism, because all of what you do is bringing someone back to home to where their system is supported enough to support them.
Yeah. And to be clear, just back to where we started, is what did that guy do for me? He used his focus to guide my focus. So between the two of us, he basically mirrored for me where my home was. So he didn't fix me. He didn't treat me, so we don't have to step into the savior complex there. And it's so much better if we then just can be a conduit for whatever this thing is that's building us, again and again and again, moment to moment to moment. And it was an amazing kind of recovery for me, but it affects how I am with my kids, with myself, with my intimate partner. How do you go into these big intimate exchanges and really turn up the volume on what's happening out here in the collective while the body stays safe?
Yeah.
And it ends up being really not a broken thing, but a mechanical thing, like balance, like being on a bike, where your body can maintain balance and you get so good at it that you can look around and have conversations without falling off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's such a good analogy for it. Yeah. It is very mechanical.
Yeah. And so there's the last, I was wondering how you would like this. When you're pedaling, there's a lot of chaos going on. There's a lot of effort and pushing, but there's also contrasted. There's this point of stillness. That's where that axle is. And so our nervous system's always paying attention, has to have the exact triangulation, which is what we do. You watch Larry Bird play or Magic Johnson or any of those, or amazing golfer. They're just moving their triangulation and focus around so that they can merge with everything. And we all go, yeah, when they show that they can go from separate to merging with everything so well that they put a little ball into a slightly bigger hole 200 yards away.
Yeah, right.
We're doing the same. It's just this energetic spiritual game that we call sport.
I love that. I do. And so where can someone, you have so much good information out there. Where can someone who's interested, intrigued, maybe being like, this is I'm kind of fascinated by this. Where can they learn more?
Yeah. Well, not my website. It's currently under construction.
I noticed that.
it's on my list. So YouTube is where I think I've been most active in the last year or so. I've been putting more on Instagram, and I believe maybe they'd be in your show notes. But subtle energy mechanics. Yeah, subtle energy mechanics. So on Instagram, it's subtle_energy_mechanics, and probably something similar on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it is on YouTube. We'll put it in the show notes, but I would direct people to your YouTube, because you do have longer form, 25, 35 minute. Yeah. And it's video based. So you can see what's happening if he's working with a client. And this is, if you're thinking you might be in this camp, there's information for you there. And if you're thinking there's someone you love, someone you know, your partner, your kid, your sister, if you have been wired this way your whole life and you've never heard someone speak your native language, it's talk about coming home. Like, it's another version of coming home. So I would encourage you to check that out.
Yeah, and I just to highlight again, it's not just for treatment of something broken, but we should have gotten this from our mom and our dad. So if you are the parent of a kid that is beautifully built, but experiences the world differently, there are practices and a language that might help you build a map and a pathway between the two of you.
Yes.
Right? And so I go on my YouTube, I go into there's videos on subject-centric and field-centric and the different layers and the koshas and how you might know and things that you can play with. And you can, again, I didn't know anything about this stuff, and then I've just been piecing this all together. It's like, and I like the easiest analogies, like the yawn. You can use the yawn to develop your own sensitivity. The yawn, like that kind of yawn, not
you got me.
Some other, there you go. Yeah, so then, that is a way to practice transmitting between two people. It's just this thing that naturally happens.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, exactly. Morning.
Okay, so last question for you. You've identified yourself as being sensitive in this way. What is something that you do? What's a practice that you have to stay attuned to yourself when you're around someone else? We already talked about the breath, but what's one you do?
Yeah. So we talked about the breath, and that's the one that I do all the time, just running in the background. But, and so I've recently rediscovered my pathway into meditation, meaning, just a few months ago, I woke up, or I was in the middle of the night, and my brain was running. I was in the middle of a breakup, and I hated it. Breakups are my least favorite thing on the whole planet, right? They suck. And so I was just like gripping my head, and it was my thoughts that they were coming so fast, and I was emotionally reacting to them, and it just didn't feel good. And I happened to put on Ramana Maharshi, Who Am I, was the name of the YouTube, and there's a woman in Australia who's a monk, and she's got the beautiful slow meditation voice, and rather than talking about meditation or about God or about a spiritual experience, his words talked me in and to this space of silence that was below thoughts. And for me, that has been the missing piece for the last 30 years. I used to have, in my late teens and early 20s, when life was still kind of easy, I used to have the time to drop in and find silence. And then I lost it for about 30 years with the kids and the careers and all the things. And so just recently, so I do that night, morning, and then if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll lie there 60 to 100 minutes and just with my focus, looking for that thing who my thoughts are speaking to. Who are these thoughts for? And that thing, that beingness that has always been there presents itself in that moment of self-inquiry. And it gives my nervous system a second to go, oh, hey, there it is. There I am. And then it goes away. Then I do it again and it goes away. So I'm basically teaching myself to ride this bike. And for me, that's been producing a smoother life. I'm becoming more, things are easier, and the synchronicities and I think the subconscious guarding patterns just aren't there as much. So something about finding that silence and just committing to be in any place other than where my thoughts are for an extended period of time. Seems to help. So what's wrong with a couple of thoughts?
Exactly? Good Lord, I got plenty of them. Well, when you said that, again, you were telling the story, and you said just looking for the place that's underneath the silence. Where is that silence? I immediately go, oh, I feel that in my body, and it doesn't take long. Yes, you can practice residing there. You can practice keeping the balance there. But that touch-in, it's like, it's going back to what you were doing with your fingertip. Like, it's just one touch.
It doesn't take long. No,
it doesn't take long. Where's the silence? And there's that moment of, oh, silence, coming home. And so my hope for the person listening today is that you get to come away from listening to this recognizing that there are different layers of you. Because I think that's the thing. We're talking about the mental chatter. That's one layer. The physical chatter. That's one layer. This energetic layer exists and is real as well. And if we can be more adept at, one, just knowing it exists, and two, consciously looking for it, so that we can change the channel, as it were. There's so much that you have in your capacity for bringing yourself back to coherence and quiet and connection. And so my hope, listener, is that you got some pieces for, one, remembering that, and two, how to get there. And I want to encourage you, if you have questions from this conversation, reach out to Craig, reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram at HeyWaitWithJay, because I have a feeling this might stir some stuff for people. And I would love to hear what your questions, your comments, your stories are. I would love for you to share this with someone who you're like, I think you dig this. And as we're coming to the close, I'm like, going to practice what we've been talking about here for a moment and realign to being able to feel me again. Because I get to the close of these things, Craig, and I get weird. It's the same thing as like when I walk into a room and there's people, all of a sudden I'm like, I have to do a thing, and I always end by saying the same words. And sometimes they come out and afterwards I'm like, well, that sounded weird, because it felt weird. So
where was I when that was said?
Exactly. So I'm going to get here and I'm going to do the thing that I always say at the very end. First, though, I'm going to say thank you, Craig, because I was about to go off and end us. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing in the way that you have. See, me being back in my body remembered to connect to you. And thank you.
Feels good. Thank you for coming over.
Yeah, right? Try that for a moment. Yeah. So the message, the remembrance, the hey, wait that I always end with is that your insides matter and the right people will meet you there. So stay with yourself. This is it. This is the attuning to ourselves and each other. So thanks for the schooling and the lessons on that, Craig.
Well, thank you.